I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, but you only go.
What's going on, guys? Jake Cam back on our video, and today I'm going to be giving you 5 prospects that I think that are going to be picked higher than expected. They're in this draft. It's very close on a lot of these prospects. It's considered not a strong draft class. So what that means is that a lot of the guys are ranked pretty similarly. So the fifth ranked guy isn't too far ranked off from the 21st ranked guy. So it really could be anybody being taken in between those couple of spots from in that first round, from the mid range to the early. So it's going to cause a lot of guys that are going to be kind of shocking picks to us. They're going to be picked earlier by NFL teams just based off different rankings for each team. But before we get into it, please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agree or disagree with that I talk about in here, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content that I'm going to be putting out. We're about a month out from the draft. Pro days are currently going on daily. So I'm going to be putting videos out about all that. So make sure to subscribe to be able to keep up with all that. And let's go ahead and get into the list of the top 5 players. Starting out with the first guy that I think is going to be picked higher than what a lot of people expect is Jalen Walker. Now, recently, over the past couple of weeks, he has been flying up a lot of mock drafts, and some people like Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper, the two main guys everybody kind of follows, they actually had Jalen Walker in the top 10. But over the last month or so, he hasn't really been in that area, and he's slowly starting to been rising. And he's being mocked mostly over the last month to the Atlanta Falcons, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Arizona Cardinals, kind of that middle of the first round area for a team that either needs an edge rusher or could use a player that plays multiple positions. Jalen Walker is definitely an interesting prospect in that fact because he split his time at linebacker and he ended up splitting his time at edge rusher. Now, he's mostly seen as a guy if he ends up getting drafted, especially that high in the top 10 where some teams might end up taking him, he's going to be picked as a edge rusher and it's going to be kind of different if you don't really use him in that multi-position aspect because he is a little bit smaller. Like for example, Michael Williams, who's considered a freak that was on the same Georgia defensive line, was 6'5", 265, I believe, and Jalen Walker is 6'2", 245. So he's a little bit lighter at the rusher position. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't be successful in the NFL because we've seen other guys that are a little bit smaller. You can use your speed in certain, tactics and edge rushing tools to be able to overcome that and be able to be an effective pass rusher in the NFL. So a couple of teams I think could end up picking him if we see him go a little bit higher, especially in that top 10 area where he's being mocked right now. I think that 6 through 8 spot is a very valid spot for Jalen Walker to be picked. Number 6 to the Raiders, number 7 to the Jets, number 8 to the Panthers. And if you're looking at it, the reason the Raiders are kind of being picked to be able to be Ashton Genty, I could easily see Pete Carroll. He's done it in the past with a guy like Jordan Brooks. He falls in love with these certain defensive prospects that really can be valuable and be able to play multiple positions. So I could easily see Pete Carroll falling in love with the skill set of Jalen Walker and the multiple aspects they could have on a defense and be able to take him kind of like he did in Jordan Brooks and Seattle a couple of years ago. The Jets, they mainly need defensive guy. I think it could be an edge rusher or it's going to be an offensive weapon. But having a defensive coach in Aaron Glenn coming from Detroit, having a dominant edge rusher in Aiden Hutchinson, I could easily see him trying to go out and get his guy that he can move around on that defensive side. And Aaron Glenn really liking this guy. Although I do think that they're going to go more offensive weapon with either a Tyler Warren or somebody in that area. And then the Panthers, I think, are the most likely place to be able to draft Jalen Walker here because they had one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and they really just need to upgrade their defensive line at the edge presence. And Jalen Walker really fits in where it fits in here to be a plug and play player immediately and just be able to come in and start for him and just to try to get more talent on that defense. They attack the secondary and free agency, so I think that he could really be able to fit that need that they have on that defense just to try to get a better overall and just to get more stops and be able to help out Bryce Young defensively. Moving on to the second guy of Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina. Now, he is a big body safety that is Kind of reminds me of Kyle Hamilton a little bit. I think he's going to be more in the box at like a strong safety type area. He's going to be a guy that kind of plays the run and the pass, and kind of similar to Kyle Hamilton. I think he could be moved down into the box now. A couple places that he's being mocked is mostly in the second round, and sometimes late in the first round to a team like the Bills. Now, he mostly rose his stock from the combine. He came out in the combine and he had probably the best safety combine in NFL history. He ended up having a crazy broad jump. He ended up running the 40-yard dash with blazing speed, and you can really see it in his tape. It just really questioned on his ability to be able to actually build that together with his athleticism and be able to just put it all together in one. I think teams are really starting to see that with Nick Emenwari. And one of my bold predictions for this draft is I know they have Malachi Starks, but he kind of struggled over the last 2 years. And his first year, he was known as pretty much the guy. But my bold prediction for this draft, I think Nick Emenwari is going to be the number one safety taken in the NFL draft. I think a couple teams that could end up picking him are a couple typical safety spots. I think the main team that could end up taking him is the Minnesota Vikings. If you look at the Vikings, they still have Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. Their biggest issue was secondary and defensive line. And if you look at what they did in free agency, they went out and they attacked the offensive line and the defensive line. And the offensive line ended up getting a lot better. Defensive line, they ended up signing Jonathan Allen, who had to be cut from the Commanders. They went out and they signed Javon Hargrave, who ended up having to be cut from the 49ers. And they really, I think him fitting in with the Vikings, he would be kind of like that guy that could play in Harrison Smith's role and kind of learn behind him for a year. And then once Harrison Smith kind of hangs it up at the end of this year or the year after, he would be the guy that would step in and take over in that role immediately. And he could be a guy that could come in certain situational downs to be able to play in that secondary in the box, kind of similar to how Harrison Smith kind of does. Be able to move down and in coverage. And with him being that big body guy, he could play both of those. And then a kind of high area where I think I could see him being drafted is the Miami Dolphins. I believe they have picked 13 around that area. And the Dolphins, they just need secondary help. I do think that they're going to look to go more offensive line, but I do think secondary after them losing John Holland in free agency, this could really be a very good pick for them at pick 13 with them needing safety and secondary help. I do think they're going to go more in the offensive line route. And then you also have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here was another one at 19 that could look to. They just paid Antoine Winfield. They've been losing the safety. And they've lost several cornerback pieces, so that secondary is really taking a hit over the last year or two. But I do think they're going to look to go more linebacker with Jahad Campbell here and try to get the Devin White replacement ever since he kind of fell off. So I do think Nick Warriors' best spot is the Minnesota Vikings, but I wouldn't really rule out him going even higher to a team like the Miami Dolphins. But I do think the Vikings are kind of the sweet spot of where he's going to go a little bit higher than what people think. With him currently having being mocked in the second round mostly, I think that he is going to be the first safety off the board whenever it comes to the NFL drafts. Now on to number three is an interesting one that have had all types of reports to him is Jackson Dart. Now he's a guy that it's been rumored from the start. He's been a second round guy mocked most of the time, but slowly he's starting to creep into the first round. And there's been reports pretty much the whole time that the Steelers could be looking for a quarterback. At this point of me recording this video, they still have not signed Aaron Rodgers. It's pretty much only Aaron Rodgers is the only free agent quarterback, and there's reports that he could be considering not playing football next year and actually retiring at this point. So if they don't sign Aaron Rodgers, the Steelers are going to be in a big hole. I will say, I've said this from day one. I necessarily haven't had it in my mocks yet because other people hadn't been doing it yet, and I just kind of go. I don't make too bold of predictions without other people doing it, but I'm gonna say Jackson Dart is going to be a first round pick. It just depends where he goes in the first round. I've been saying this whole time, I think he's more in the later half of the first round for a team trading up into this from the early second round spot. Maybe a team like the Raiders that want to get a future quarterback and they trade up into the second round. But at this point, with all the rumors and all the smoke that's going around, I don't think that's the case. I think a team could take Jackson Dart. I think they could move up. I think the key spot is the Steelers at 21. So a couple teams that could take him, mainly the Steelers are the biggest rumor at 21 right now. There was a rumor recently that they love Jalen Milroe. I think taking Jalen Milroe in the first round would be insane. But Jackson Dart does fall along in that little spot right there at pick number 21 for them. So it really makes sense for them to take him, especially not having a quarterback. I know the Kenny Pickett stuff, the comparisons, just because they were taken around the same spot at 20 a couple of years ago. But Jackson Dart is not Kenny Pickett. He's nothing like Kenny Pickett. I preferably like Jackson Dart a lot better. And that sweet spot is going to be a team moving up in front of 21 to the Steelers for a team that may want to trade back. I could easily see a team like the Rams who know that Matthew Stafford only has about 2 more years left on the team, drafting Jackson Dart, letting him sit, learn behind Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford in that system, and then letting him play when Stafford's done, or they want to move on from Matthew Stafford. But the crazy wild card spot that even I think Mel Kiper had in his mock, the wild card spot is the New Orleans Saints. They just brought in Kellen Moore as their quarterback. I mean, Kellen Moore as their head coach, my bad. He's going to be looking for his franchise quarterback and a guy that he likes. And if he ends up liking Jackson Dart, if you like a quarterback in the NFL draft and you think that he's going to be very good, you draft him no matter what other people think. If you fall in love with a quarterback, it doesn't matter where you take him, you draft him. And if the New Orleans Saints end up falling in love with Jackson Dart, they could take him at the ninth overall pick because it's kind of a tweener spot for them anyway. They're kind of older. They need to get cheaper. Derek Carr, even though he restructured, you're still looking for your franchise guy. Derek Carr is going to be gone in about 2 to 3 years, I think, maybe even earlier. He didn't play very well last year. He had injury issues, so you're really looking for your guy if you're Kellen Moore, and Jackson Dart could be your guy, considering Shador and Cam Ward are probably going to be gone in the first 3 picks. So you're still looking for your future franchise quarterback, and the New Orleans Saints are the real wild card here with Jackson Dart if they end up taking him at 9. That could cause the Steelers to take somebody like a Jalen Milroe if they really like him at the end of the first round, even though that would be insane. And I really think the two key spots are the Steelers or the Saints, number 9, or the Steelers at 21. And then if the Rams end up wanting to move in front of the Pittsburgh Steelers to be able to take Jackson Dart, that would be the real key here. And with him being mocked mostly in the second round, I do think he's going to be going in the first round, no matter what happens, whether it's a team trading up for him in the late half of the first round. The number 4 player that I think is going to be taken higher than what people think is Shamar Stewart. Now, he did have that era in this offseason process where he was being taken in the top 10, but I think over the last couple weeks or so since the NFL Combine, that's kind of cooled off and he's been kind of falling back down into where he was kind of before. Now, he's in the same situation as Nick Emmanwori, where he had one of the best combines in NFL history, especially from an edge player. And he's more seen as that high upside guy. And when you're taking a guy in the first round to be able to be your franchise edge rusher, you're going to be able to take him off potential and the upside that he has. And Shamar Stewart, with the talent and the pure um, physical traits that he has, you're going to draft him very high. Now, where he's being mocked mostly now, ever since he's been kind of falling back down, is to the Bengals, who need another edge rusher to pair with. Trey Hendrickson. The Falcons, who need edge presence and defensive help badly ever since they let go of Grady Jarrett about a month ago in free agency. They desperately need defensive help, and they mostly take freak athletes on the offensive side like Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson and Drake London. So why not continue that on the defensive side with Shamar Stewart? And then I've seen some where he even falls to the late half of the first round, and he's been the last pick in the first round to the Philadelphia Eagles. If he goes to the Eagles, that would be just the rich getting richer at that point and just letting the draft come to them. But I do think he could go all the way up into that top 10 area for kind of the same reasons that Jalen Walker is being seen as a top 10 guy. Just that upside that he has and the athleticism and traits that he has. So I could see once again the same reason Jalen Walker, the Raiders, Pete Carroll loves his defensive guys and especially crazy athletes on the defensive side if he really ends up liking them. The Panthers, like I said earlier, they need defensive line help, and their defense was the worst in the NFL last year. And with that, Shamar Stewart could come in and be that dominant edge rushing piece. And another team to look out for are the Cowboys. The Cowboys could go several different directions in this draft. They could end up going running back with Amarion Hampton, but I do think that they wait until the second round probably and attack another position. A lot of people have, there's been a lot of buzz that they are going to like and want to try to draft Matthew Golden, who could be another receiver option to pair up with CeeDee Lamb and kind of be that speed threat guy with the Chris route running combination. And he could end up going there, but I do think Shamar Stewart, based on his upside and what you do in the first round when you're trying to draft a dominant franchise edge rusher, you go based on upside. We've seen it with Trayvon Walker a couple of years ago, going number one to the Jacksonville Jaguars over Aiden Hutchinson. And teams do this all the time, and I think that's going to continue this year. I think Shamar Stewart is going to go in that top 10, the top 15 area and be drafted much higher than what people think and where they have him now in the late teens and early 20s, sometimes even in the later half of the first round. I think he's going to go in the early teens area, maybe even to the San Francisco 49ers could have been another team on here that could look for an edge rusher in the Robert Saleh scheme. He took Will McDonald a couple of years ago when he was with the New York Jets. So Shamar Stewart could fit that role in there as well. So I think that early teens area are going to see the upside and all the physical traits that he has, and they're going to be able to take him much higher than what people are thinking currently right now, where they're having him mocked in the late first round. And then the last guy that I'm going to be talking about, where he could be drafted much higher than what people think, is Amarion Hampton from North Carolina, running back. He is kind of considered to be a lot closer to Ashton Jeanty than what people think. Ashton Jeanty is way up here at the top of the totem pole for the running backs, but I don't think Amarion Hampton is too far off. And most of the time, he's being mocked to the Denver Broncos at pick 20. I think it's kind of consistent that if he makes it to number 20 with the Denver Broncos, they're going to take him there to be able to help develop Bo Nix. But I do think there's a couple other spots where he could go much higher, and it really just depends where Jeanty goes. If Jeanty ends up falling to the Bears at 10, obviously Amarion Hampton is not going to be picked there. If Jeanty is going to be the first running back off the board. But Jeanty could, there's been rumors that maybe he could go number 4 to the Patriots because he's considered one of the best players in the draft, and you're going to be looking to get Drake May some help. He go the consistency is Ashton Jeanty is going to go number 6 to the Raiders. So if he goes number 6 to the Raiders, that could open the door for Amarion Hampton to go earlier in this draft to several other spots. Even though he's being considered number 12 or number 20 to the Broncos, he could go all the way up number 10 to the Chicago Bears if Genty's not there, number 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. And if you look at Amarion Hampton, he's more of a bigger back, but he has the speed. He was 6 foot, which is way taller than Jeanty, way bigger than Jeanty, and he ran a 4.46, so he has the speed to go along with his size. And if you look at these teams like the Chicago Bears, they just hired Ben Johnson as their head coach, and with him and his offensive scheme at the Detroit Lions, it was we're going to run the ball and we're going to dominate running the ball, and that's pretty much what they did. And how they did that, they upgraded the offensive line, which Chicago did in free agency. They went out and got Joe Thuney, Drew Dalmore, Jonah Jackson, all to be interior pieces, and they already had their two tackles set and Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones. So they have their offensive line pretty much set. They could add some depth pieces in the middle rounds of the NFL draft, so that's not really necessarily, something that they're dying to be able to take here at number 10. So they really need a running back, is what Ben Johnson is going to be looking for. He's going to be looking for his franchise guy that's going to carry his offense and be able to run down people's throat behind that offensive line that they just built throughout this offseason. And with Jeanty being off the board at 6 and Amarion Hampton not being too far off from Jeanty, it makes sense for the Chicago Bears to be able to take him at 10. Now, they could go with an edge rushing piece, maybe a Shamar Stewart, somewhere like that, because they do need another edge rusher and more of a dominant defensive line, I would think. But the running back position being more valuable to them in that Ben Johnson scheme and what they're trying to do to make Caleb Williams' life easier makes total sense for him to go here at 10. And at number 12, the Dallas Cowboys, they ended up letting Rico Dowdle walk in free agency. They did bring in Javonte Williams, so I guess that kind of fills it. But he's not a franchise guy. He's more of a rotational piece like they used him in Denver this past season with Sean Payton, and they would use him kind of the same way. So that still opens up running back. I do think the Cowboys do wait and they take somebody like a Matthew Golden here at number 12 or a edge piece like a Shamar Stewart, but it doesn't totally rule out them taking Omarion Hampton here because they still need that running back position. They had success with it a couple of years ago in 2016 when they took Ezekiel Elliott at number 4. So Jerry Jones has done it in the past if he really likes the prospect and sees them as a franchise guy. And Omarion Hampton could be that for the Dallas Cowboys in a loaded running back class. Now, the only thing that's going to hurt Omarion Hampton and his draft stock is because it's such a loaded class. So they're going to look at it at the number 12 pick and they're going to say, why would I take Omarion Hampton here when I get just as loaded as a running back? Maybe a Trayvon Henderson in the 2nd round, maybe a Cam Scatterbo in the 5th round, somebody like that. Maybe a Quinshon Judkins in the 3rd round. Why would I take Omarion Hampton here when I can get the value later in the draft and a higher value later? So that might hurt him here and make him fall a little bit, but I do think he's going to go much higher and possibly be a top 10 pick to Chicago Bears than what people are thinking right now with him being number 20 to the Denver Broncos. So this is my list of the top 5 guys I think are going to be drafted much higher than what people are thinking currently. Please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agree or disagree with that I talked about in here, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content that I'm going to be putting out, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, feel like John Moran, need a triple-double, told him check the stats, yeah, I got a couple, I don't drop the ball, now I never fumble, I'm the MVP, now I feel like Russell, feel like John Moran, need a triple-double, told him check the stats, yeah, I got a couple,